Hello, this is a book review on The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood. It was a set reading book for our local library reading group, and it's quite a thick book, well over 600 pages. Very interesting, very interesting, basically because the format is not one that you would expect in the book. And I think it's been purposely set that way because of the main character, Iris. That the fact is that she feels that there's a short space of time left for her to put down her thoughts. So the book is not one that she wanted really to hurry, but also she knew that time wasn't really on her side. And that's what you pick up, the intensity of the book. There also was a main point that there were two aspects of the book and very strong character development, but there was two aspects that came. I know I could have picked up many from this book, the historical, the moral aspects of the book that was in here, and the way that the characters portrayed each other into relationships which they had with each other. There are many aspects that you could pick out from this book, but the two that I am going to discuss is the religious aspect and the writing aspect, and I'm going to try and put them into the content of one person, which he, as a character, even though his part was very minor, he played a powerful role within there, and also their mother. But the person that holds the whole plot together wasn't the main characters, funny enough. It was just two people, and two people that had different ways of contributing to the main characters, Iris and Laura's upbringing, which affected them in their adult life. One was on purpose, which was the mother. She was a devout Methodist, and her views was that you had to have a purpose to your life, a contribution to society outside of yourself. This was very much indicated by her, the way she was described. And one of the sisters did pick up on that. Not so much when she was growing up because she was still a baby, but definitely as she got older, that came through. The older sister, even though everybody expected her to pick up after the mother, was more of wanting the father's attitude, which was more pragmatic. But the person that affected them the most was a character called Alex. From page 31, he states here that even though she's writing from The Blind Assassin, you will learn later on that his character has formed this other fictional character within The Blind Assassin. But the character in The Blind Assassin really does bring it home when he says, she says, "Sometimes you don't like me very much." And then he replies, "I can't think about much else lately," he says. "But liking is different. Liking takes time. I don't have the time to like you. I cannot concentrate on it." So that was picked up throughout the whole book. You didn't really you could choose who you wanted to like, but that wasn't the main emphasis of the book, because as this character says, you just don't have the time to like someone to sometimes the depth that you want to. So you pick up on things that are to the way you would want to see them rather than how they actually are. And this was the interaction between the two sisters. This also came out in the religious aspect, because one sister had the time, the younger sister, Laura, had the time to get to know God. But the older sister, Iris, really didn't, because she had more responsibility to look after the younger sister. And that resentment sometimes came through within the book. And also, there was, as I said, that element of trusting, because as Laura said in one part of the book, again, near the blind assassin, the one point, page 345, she writes, the only way you can write the truth is to assume that what you set down will never be read, not by any other person, not even by yourself, at some later date. Otherwise you begin to excusing yourself. You must see the writing as emerging like a long scroll of ink from the index finger of your right hand. You must see your left hand erasing it. Impossible, of course. I pay out my line. I pay my line. This black thread I'm spinning across the page. Again, this is about truth. I mean, it's. I think some of the aspects of this moral perception was about truth, because she goes on, I look over what I've written and I know it's wrong, not because of what I've set down, but because of what I've omitted. And what isn't there has a presence like the absence of light. You want the truth, of course. You want me to put 2 and 2 together, but 2 and 2 doesn't necessarily get you the truth. 2 and 2 equals a voice outside the window. 2 and 2 equals the wind. The living bird is not, it's labelled bones. And it took me a while to work out what she meant by that, because I only found that out because I went to my Christian meditation class, and there was talk of the 2 doves being a symbol of the Holy Spirit. But the 2 doves drinking out of chalice was a metaphor for the sacred, of a transcultural metaphor. And that's who she's talking about. When she's talking about the living bird is not labelled by its bones, what she's talking about is the Holy Spirit, because also the Holy Spirit is also known to come as the wind. And it was quite interesting, because she deals with it in that way, and you get to realise, I'm not giving any plot away here, you get to realise what she means by the living bird being a transcultural metaphor when you read the book, because there was a lot of transcultural aspects to this book. I mean, it delved very deeply into it. As I said, also the religious aspects as well, which I find absolutely fascinating. Another aspect of the book was on page 632, where she states, the picture is of happiness, the story not. Happiness is a garden walled with glass. There's no way in or out. In paradise there are no stories, because there are no journeys. It's loss and regret, misery and yearning, that drive the story forward along its twisted road. That was written by Iris on page 632. But then I thought, this sounds quite familiar, because in Negotiating the Dead, which is the book I read to get familiar with the author's writing style, there was a certain there was a certain aspect to it that caught my attention when I started reading Blind Assassin, and that was on page 46 of Negotiating Dead. Margaret Atwood writes, talking is very old, writing is not. Most people learn to talk when they are infants, but many people never learn to read. Reading is decoding, and in order to do it, you have to learn a purely arbitrary set of markings, an abstract formula. And that's what you get in The Blind Assassin, an abstract formula. Because when I read about the picture of happiness, I also automatically came into my mind was Paradise Lost, and I felt that was a decoding there, because in Paradise Lost, written by John Milton, he says on one part, "So without least impulse or shadow of fate, or aught by me immutably foreseen, they trespass, authors to themselves in all, both what they judge and what they choose for so. I formed them free, and free they must remain, till they enthrall themselves. I else must change their nature, and revoke the high decree, unchangeable, eternal, which ordained their freedom, they themselves ordained their fall." And this very much is, I think, about the blind assassin in this book, because it is about self-tempting, it is about the self-depraved, and it is about the self-deceived, and that is on this page of Paradise Lost. And in this, they do lose that sense of their own paradise, their own sense of home. That there was even one point that they said it's like going home sweet home, returning home, even if it's imaginary, because they know they cannot go back to what it was before their mother died. And this is something you pick up on the book, the textualization of the book, but there is that sense of tragedy about it, and I found it so worth reading, because there was this decoding that was going on all the time within the book, and I enjoyed reading it very much. I did enjoy reading it. It took a lot out of me, because I said it was so many things going on, but you never got bogged down with it. It's just something you, again, persevere with, take your time, and I could keep returning to this book again and again, and I will still find something. I thought, wow, I never thought of that. And that's what a book for me is all about, is that it can pull me back time and time again, and I never lose sight of the things that could give me an insight into people, or to the ways that were. It was just a fascinating book to read, and I think that picture of happiness is not the story is very true, very, very true, within the book and within life. Thank you for listening. And just in case you wondered who Paul I was holding here, it's one of my cats who's coming into the picture here. So she wanted to get in the action, so she's just holding on to my finger with her paw. So this is Electra. So she's not saying hello, but this is Electra. She's a Siamese.